understand. Freedom has many difficulties, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in.
Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy.
Hi, everyone. We've had an exciting week.
Well, exciting week, of course, the departure from his earthly being of the Pope has...
He's not a zombie anymore.
He's not a zombie anymore. Last week I told you that he was about to die, and he died soon after. Christy already...
I said he was dead already, and he was a zombie.
Well, in any case, they managed to parade him, like I said last week, around the square for Easter. His
that
last...
was disconcerting. I saw that. I was like, what is going on?
Well, yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's The Weekend with Bernie. What's the name of that movie?
Weekend with Bernie.
Yeah, I guess so. In any case, one of the last people to see him alive was J.D. Vance, and incredibly enough, JFK's niece accused Vance of having killed the Pope. Crazy stuff. I went on the Alex Jones show. I reported about the future conclave. Today, we will, of course, analyze things even further because, guys, of course, we are revealing to you what I already said. There will be a black pope. There will be an African pope, very much possible, this election of Turkson, which I have already pointed out in 2022 in volume 7 of my Confessions. So, because he's connected to the World Economic Forum. However, now we have also somebody else, a Chinese Filipino cardinal who the Chinese Communist Party and the Patriotic Catholic Association, which is basically another branch of the Chinese Communist Party, which was created in the 50s to control Catholicism in China. Well, they seem to want him very much. So we have now these two contenders.
Do you have a favorite?
Like I said, I am definitely more propense to think that it's going to be Cardinal Turkson. But today I would like also to discuss the reality and not the fiction. You know, we have this film, Conclave. Now the film has... there's a renewed interest in this film, and everybody's watching it in various streaming services. after, of course, it was already a hit at the box office, but now there is, of course, renewed interest. And the thing is that people who see Conclave think they know everything about the Vatican, everything about conclaves, and that's it. There is a lot of errors in this movie, and there is first of all this Cardinal Impectore, this guy who suddenly comes from Kabul. Impectore means that he was nominated secretly by the Pope. However, if in reality you go to a conclave and you have to be accepted by the other cardinals, the Pope would have been obliged to reveal the existence of this cardinal before the election. So to become a cardinal elector, you have to be revealed. You cannot be only impectore. So there is this, there is some errors. However, everybody is talking again about conclave, so we would like to point out on certain things. Actually, there's a problem at the moment in Casa Santa Marta, which is the place, it's actually a hotel within the Vatican walls, where the Pope ended up residing. Now, this hotel has been built to host all the people, all the cardinal electors, those ones who are less than 80 years of age, who participate in electing the cardinal. But there is a problem, because the Pope went and lived there. He didn't go and live in the Vatican, in the official palace. He preferred to be modest. He made this whole thing about him being a modest guy, and so he preferred to stay in Casa Santa Marta, also with his collaborators who occupied various rooms. So now there is problems in how many rooms are available for the actual cardinals, because, first of all, as I pointed out in my articles you can find on leozagami.com, Pope Francis has elected an unparalleled number of cardinals to rig the whole conclave that will follow his death. So 80%, 108 cardinals were elected and elevated to the cardinalship by Pope Francis. What does it mean? If you are elevated by Pope Francis, you are obliged to follow in his footsteps. So all those people who are there in the mainstream or even in the Catholic media who are saying, oh, well, it would be nice to have a conservative Pope and all that. Guys, mathematics
the ball is out.
No, mathematics is not an opinion. And even the talk, there is a lot of talk about Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State, who I've mentioned, by the way, in my books, because he's very much connected to the Academy of the Illuminati. But Cardinal Parolin, who is just on the verge of being too old, is an Italian, and there is no interest at the moment within the Vatican to elect an Italian. I read this article that just came out yesterday from the Catholic News Agency about the film Conclave and the reality of the film, the real conclave. And they were actually saying, they were criticizing the film because they said there is not enough spirituality. There is no mention of Jesus, and the Holy Spirit appears only once, vaguely. Guys, the reality is that there's never been any spirituality in the conclaves. And whomever is saying the contrary is absolutely lying. The actual way it was portrayed in this movie Conclave, it was quite honest, to tell you the truth. And I was quite surprised because there is conclave drama. It's actually happening now with Cardinal Beccio, who demands to participate even after he was accused by the Pope and he was involved in a fraud that we talked about for years with the acquisition of this building in London and so on. But first of all, guys, as you will see in this Italian website, it says here that there is 15 cardinals extra in this whole thing, and that they can't fit them in Santa Marta. So this is the first news of the day. 15 cardinals di troppo. It means that this conclave like this could risk not to be valid, because those cardinals, if they are electors, they're all entitled to be there. However, I don't see the problem. Why don't they just put a few in the same room? I mean, they're nice rooms in Casa Santa Marta. I mean, the movie Conclave at least shows you how nice that place is. And I don't think, they want to keep them separate. But the reality is that there is no room. The reality is also that the Pope, from what the article is saying here, didn't calculate that he will die so soon. So he was expecting some of them to reach the 80 years of age before he died next year. So that means that they now have no.
Once they're 80, they can't.
Yeah, they can't participate. That's another thing. Another error in the movie Conclave I noticed is the mixing the figure of the Camerlengo with the figure of the deacon in charge of the College of Cardinals. These two figures are a little bit mixed up. Why? And I will explain in a moment. You have the Camerlengo who is in charge of the sede vacante. The moment the seals are broken, the Pope is declared dead, they declare sede vacante, meaning that there is no Pope in charge. At that point, the Camerlengo is in charge. But then you have another figure, which is the deacon, who is also in charge. But before going back to that incongruence in the movie, and by the way, the strange thing is that in reality, the deacon is too old because it's Cardinal Red, one of the oldest cardinals at the moment, who is the deacon, is 92 years of age. So he's not going to be able to be there anyway. And it will be actually Parolin, the present Secretary of State. A lot of people are talking about as a possible papabile. Papabile means the possibility of becoming Pope. So today we want to discuss the reality of all this. There is, of course, a constitution that it's in charge of the whole validation, and everything is followed very scrupulously for hundreds of years. This tradition has been followed in a very scrupulous way. However, in the Hotel Santa Marta, if you want to call it hotel, it's just like when you go into the Vatican, you find the St. Peter's Square, you go on the left, there is the road that goes after towards Borgo Santo Spirito and the Jesuits. But before that, actually still in the Vatican walls, right on the, there is an entrance there is Swiss guards, you go in, and then you go on the right and you enter Casa Santa Marta. I've been there only once, but it's a place that is inaccessible if you don't enter into Vatican territory. However, it's a place with 106 suites and 28 single rooms in all 134. Okay? So some people will have to sleep with other people, but there is not available the room of the Pope because that has been sealed by tradition. Everybody who has seen the film Conclave has seen the moment they seal the room, which after is unsealed by the protagonist, the deacon who breaks the seal and to enter and inspect the room. There is that moment of the scene. So I think that to describe everything in a clear way, I would like to go through a parallel between the movie and also we would like to discuss what happened earlier, because we had the funeral, we had Zelensky meeting with not the Pope, it wasn't Pope Trump, but it was Donald J. Trump and Zelensky together. That was quite an interesting situation. I'm going to show you the images for those who have missed this encounter today. And welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. Who are our sponsors today, Christy?
Malgrazada Minta, Daniel Estes, and Aiden Carter.
Thank you so much, guys. We have
And all the people that bought the book this week. It was great.
Thank you very much. And of course, today will be remembered because we had the left had spread the fake news that Trump will be put somewhere else. He will be put in the third row.
Yeah.
Instead, it was Joe Biden who was put in the third row, guys. So we have also images of Joe Biden who was put in the third row. But these are the images of President Trump meeting with Zelensky. So this is Zelensky meeting for the first time after their crash in the White House. There is, of course, now a lot of talk, especially from the religious contingent, saying, oh, God is helping peace, helping the peace process. Bergoglio wanted this peace process too. Well, I'm sorry to say, but behind the scenes, Bergoglio, as a Jesuit, was quite an instigator because the persecution of the Orthodox Church linked to Moscow has been one of the priorities of the midget there, Zelensky, who was present at this incredible event today with many other heads of state. We will also show you a brief clip about that funeral we had today before, of course, discussing further the conclave. Here we have they brought him to his place, to his position, and we have, of course, various heads of state present. There is the Finnish president there. There is Melania, of course, dressed up as it's required for a funeral at the Vatican in black. In general, only the Catholic queens can wear white, but not, of course, during a funeral of a pope. That is one of the rules. And like I said, Joe Biden was nowhere to be seen. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy. Somebody said that Melania turned 55 today. Well, what a day. I mean, she's in Rome, of course, beautiful city for the funeral of a pope. I don't know if that's a great way to spend your
my birthday there.
Absolutely. Every time I brought Christy there, it was not that great as an experience. In any case, here we go with the Leo Zagami Show. Guys, if you want to support our show, I'm going to put our GoFundMe, just so you have a way to support us. We have also Cash App. You can find the handle at leozagami.com, together with all my latest articles, guys. This is very important. In fact, I want to show you one of my latest articles, which is connected to what is happening at the Vatican in a few days. On the 6th of May, the conclave should take place. And the two #1 candidates are the following. Here we have the Chinese Communist Party candidate on the left.
Like a WWF.
And then you have on the right the World Economic Forum cardinal, which is Cardinal Turkson, which I said it was a favorite of the World Economic Forum in volume 7 of my confession, which is dedicated to the occult roots of the Great Reset. And of course, it's a book I suggest you read, so you find also the connections that are there between the World Economic Forum and, of course, Pope Francis and the Vatican after what was known as the Pact of the Catacombs, which was sanctioned in the Catacombs of Rome at the end of the Second Vatican Council in December 1965. Any case, Cardinal Luis Tagle is this guy here, and he's actually a Filipino-Chinese, very much connected with China, very much a favorite of the Chinese Patriotic Church. This is very important because the Chinese Patriotic Church has an identity of its own. It started in the 1950s. It's actually self-nominated themselves bishops, and they followed up after a series of manifestos were issued by Catholics who were also members of the Communist Party, who in the end formed this association in 1957 and started nominating their own bishops. These bishops were never recognized by the Vatican until John Paul II started to gradually open up. Ratzinger also, even if Ratzinger was still very much supportive of what is known as the underground church, that today is no longer existent, because in 2018, in the fall of 2018, they ratified the first agreement. Remember, there was no diplomatic connection between the Vatican and China, because the Vatican from 1951 recognized Taiwan as China, and mainland China instead, with the Chinese Communist Party, was never recognized, especially when they started to persecute the Jesuits and the Catholics. Certain Jesuits managed to stay though, and actually they became part of the, of course the Jesuits are very transformative, of the Catholic Patriotic Association, and at that point it was like in secret, this connection was still kept with the Vatican. The Vatican, of course, couldn't recognize bishops which had no episcopal lineage that was legitimate, because most of them being sanctioned by the Communist Party doesn't mean, some of them were former people that had been in seminars, who had been brought up by the Catholic Church before, of course, passing to the Catholic Patriotic Association. But this Catholic Patriotic Association seems to like very much this figure, which is called Cardinal Luis Tagle of the Philippines. So it's either him or either the Ghanaian Cardinal Peter Turkson, or another black guy. But when you see the movie Conclave, it's actually quite racist, because the black guy who is in the movie Conclave is accused of having had an illegitimate son with a nun that suddenly explodes in a scandal. He in the movie Conclave, basically, there is a parallel with the reality, and that's why New York Vulture has made this article a few days ago, which I want to show you. Filipino is Hispanic, not true. There is also Chinese Filipino. There's a long stories of Chinese Filipinos. You can actually study that story, and maybe you can become more knowledgeable. For those people who have a little understanding of what I'm showing here is Cardinal Lawrence. For those who have watched the movie the movie Conclave, he is the cardinal deacon, the one in charge of the conclave, no? And they make a parallel with Cardinal Parolin here, you see, which is actually quite correct, because in reality, the deacon at the moment is Cardinal Del Re, who presided today over the funeral, but because he's too old, he will not be able to preside over the conclave. Now, Cardinal Del Re is a kind of a VIP style cardinal. I want to show you the real Cardinal Deacon and how decadent he is, because he's known in Rome as one of the most decadent cardinals. He likes to eat very much, like most cardinals here. Porchetta. Yes, then he has nice drinks. Here it is. The guy is, like I said, 92. He's always eating. Here with the famous Andreotti politician, who was actually the real head of the P2 Lodge. Here with the communist Massimo D'Alema. Del Re is, and here with a lady from the aristocracy who probably is one of his lovers. This is one of the most decadent guys in Rome. So I'm pretty glad he's actually being substituted by Parolin, who is at least a little bit more. Huh? The actual Chinese Filipino cardinal who we have talked about is supposed to be at the moment a guy who has the cards to become Pope. In fact, he appears in this parallel by Vulture with the movie. In the movie, we have the figure of a conservative cardinal. He's an actor, an Italian actor, Castellitto. Like we said, there is no chance that a conservative will have this kind of effect on a conclave. Here, though, they put him as they parallel with Peter Erdo, who is actually considered a conservative cardinal. But like I said, mathematics is not an opinion. Pope Francis has rigged the cardinalship by rigging the papacy, by rigging the cardinalship, by nominating all these cardinals. That's why there are so many that they don't even have a space in Casa Santa Marta, because up until December, the Pope nominated more cardinals than ever, so he could rig the whole thing and he could have a Pope decided by him. And this is the surprise. You see, here they make a parallel between the guy who in conclave becomes ultimately Pope, who we discovered, by the way, has a female uterus, so he's half woman, half man. Yes, Cardinal Benitez, and Luis Antonio Tagle. Now, we know, and this is not a speculation, this is reality, that the Pope has actually nominated, not in pectore, but in reality, a cardinal who is supposed to have both sexes. What does it mean, both sexes? It means being intersex, because we used to call them hermaphrodites. That was the correct name that I always used. But nowadays, you can't use the name hermaphrodite because they like to use intersex. They even have a symbol. Watch. This is their symbol. Seems like a symbol of the Illuminati. Human rights and legal. This is several, including chromosome patterns, gonads, or genitals, and they have sex assignment at birth, usually aligns with a child's external genitalia. So, if you have a penis that is more visible than your vagina, you are given the title of man, usually. However, the Vatican says, "Oh, we don't accept that kind of person in the priesthood." That's a complete lie. It's a complete lie, and I can prove that very much from Michela Mercenaro. Michela Mercenaro was actually a priest working at the Vatican archives who ended up choosing to walk out of the priesthood and becoming a full-on woman. Operate, because you can decide. No, if you have both, you can decide in the end. And she became later involved with the scandal, because she was a priest in the Vatican. She was working at the Vatican archives. She ended up being arrested for, but after many years of working for the police, she was an expert on sex, on the occult. They then discovered that she had a secret a satanic temple in her house. I actually had exposure for a number of years. And then eventually Michela Mercenario was arrested. And you can see it from here that she was, at the time, this is an old article, in the 80s, she became woman after being a hermaphrodite. So, and she was a priest. So the Vatican, guys, it's a little bit, you know, could be hiding amongst the cardinal electors somebody with both sexes. So what has been shown to you in the movie Conclave could have some reality. However, we have then the Black Cardinal. Like I said, I find the whole thing a little bit racist because in the movie Conclave, you have Casa Santa Marta, which is sealed. They can't move from there. They're going to have to live there until they elect a pope. And then what happens is this guy starts to get a lot of votes because they have few vote, you know, it's like they shut the rooms, you start voting. If they don't reach the necessary amount of votes, they you see the black smoke coming out of the chimney until you see the white smoke, and at that point, Habemus Papam, and you have the Pope. This is the process that brings the papabile to become Pope. However, this gentleman here in the movie, who is described as a possible future pope, suddenly has a scandal in the film. In the film, there is Isabella Rossellini, who is in charge, is a typical Jesuitessa, which is these nuns who usually belong to Catholic orders which accept the Ignatius spiritual exercises and practice them and work very much hand in hand with the Jesuit order. There's a number of them. And she's in charge, this Isabella Rossellini, which used to be a very beautiful lady back when she was young. She's the daughter also of a famous actress, no? A famous Swedish actress. I can't remember the name, but now she really looks old, Isabella Rossellini. And at one point, this black nun drops the food, and there is a bit of this sudden, how do you say, chaos. And she's found in the office with Isabella Rossellini. Eventually, the deacon arrives, investigating the whole thing, and she admits that she had a child from this cardinal 30 years earlier when he was young. He gets, of course, a visit in his room in Santa Marta by the cardinal deacon, and he has to admit that that is true. And he starts crying, and eventually he has to renounce to the papacy. So this is what happens in the movie Conclave. However, we have various candidates. We have Cardinal Turkson, which is a favorite, which I said in volume 7 might become Pope, who I don't know why it's compared by Vulture to this cardinal in the movie. This cardinal in the movie that gets a visit, like I said, from the main character of this movie, which is interpreted by a brilliant Ralph Fiennes. Like I said, there is some incongruences because the character of the Camerlengo is mixed with the dean, the leadership of the dean, which is in any case Thomas Lawrence, which is the guy who interprets what at the moment is in reality the office of Giovanni Battista Re, which we said, by the way, will not be able to participate because he's too old. So this is Giovanni, the real guy who is being interpreted by Ralph Fiennes. And then there is a Camerlengo who is another guy who then gets himself a little bit more conservative, who in this movie gets accused of being who have participated in acts of simony. And so for that reason, he will have to also step back. In this whole movie, guys, Conclave, like I said, the fact that they have pushed aside the first black pope in this way sounds a little bit suspect, because in reality, something happened in the last few days when the body of the pope was shown. This scene might be remembered in the future. Now, I am making an hypothesis here, but this might be the beginning of the making of the first black pope. Black, not intended as the head of the Jesuits, but intended as the first African or of African descent. This happened a couple of days ago during the funeral, and it was complete chaos when this black guy said, "Is it because I'm black?" And he was kicked out. Now keep this in mind. This could be also a scene that could be used in a few weeks. Imagine this. The conclave ends in the middle of May with the election of the first African Pope. The African Pope on a Wednesday, when usually the popes do their audience, receives this poor African guy who was the victim of racism in the Vatican, and everything in front of the cameras for the joy of a word which is, of course, emblazoned and taken, oh, wow, the first African Pope, because Africa is the place where the Catholic faith is growing more than ever. So there is no other possibility. There's no Italian, there's no other kind of popes, white popes. Forget about it. It's either the Chinese, who have been given billions to the Vatican, and I'm talking billions. I'm not joking when I say that they are talking billions, because I can show you an article by a Chinese billionaire that confirms what I'm telling you. A fugitive tycoon in 2020 said that the Vatican was being bribed by China, and not only the Vatican, also Italy and Austria, which makes sense because they are very corrupt countries. Fugitive Chinese tycoon accuses Beijing of bribing the Vatican with 1.6 billion a year to stop them criticizing Beijing religion policies. If you go to my website back in 2020, you can find a similar article, but based also on the testimony that was relayed in a book by Marco Tosati, who made a book also with the collaboration of Vigano. I can show you this article if I find it here. Let's see if I find it. Here. This is an article, guys, from Leo Zagami from back in the days. The Vatican sold the Catholic faith to China for 2 billion a year, because the price is, it's insecure. We have 1.6, 2 billion. And here I say the Vatican is helping China to advance global Marxism and ignore Hong Kong in exchange for billions of dollars in annual payments. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been sending $2 billion annually to Holy See since 2013, the year the Jesuit Pope took office. Yeah. So, you see, if for any reason neither Turkson or any other African manages to become Pope, it's obviously going to be the Filipino Chinese that will take control of the situation, because the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, has been allocating billions, guys. Billions, not peanuts. And so with money, you can buy the conclave, you can buy everything. And so this is another thing that I wanted to show today to our viewers. The fact that the Catholic News Agency, and here, let me see if I can find it, has made this article yesterday, which I have mentioned earlier, in which they say they distinguish facts from fiction and what they got wrong in the movie Conclave. And one of the things that is said as widely criticized is the depiction of the College of Cardinals deeply divided among the ideological faction and the papacy as a highly political rather than a spiritual office. It has always been a political rather than a spiritual office. And I can confirm you that this happened already in 1958, when there was actually Cardinal Siri elected, not once, but Malachi Marti said even 3 times. Now, Malachi Marti said that Siri deliberately renounced, but in reality, he took a name. That name is Gregory the 17th, and is the name that you see of the Pope at the beginning of the movie Conclave. So here I want to show you a video of what happened in 1958 when Cardinal Siri, who I talk about in volume 3 of my Confessions. I also show the last, I have the privilege to talk with the last seminarist of Cardinal Siri, Walter Trovato, who is also he works also as an honorary canon of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, of the SMOM. This is us, and this is
that Chandra?
And that's Chandra. Yes, we were there. And this is the white smoke when Cardinal Siri was elected Pope. He was threatened because Cardinal Siri wouldn't stand for the Masonic values that were about to take over the Vatican with the Second Vatican Council. This is what happened.
Thousands fill St. Peter's Square as the conclave of the College of Cardinals begins. Cardinal Tisserand, Dean of the Sacred College, leads them to the Sistine Chapel, where they are sealed off from the outside world during their deliberations until the next Pope is chosen.
This is Cardinal Giuseppe Siri, Archbishop of Genoa. Cardinal Siri was the most popular cleric in Italy at the time of the conclave, and the man most observers expected to be proclaimed Pope. He was also Pius XII's desired successor. Pius XII made him Archbishop of Genoa when he was 40, and made him Cardinal when he was just 47, at the time the youngest of the College of Cardinals. He was a staunch traditionalist and adamantly opposed to innovation. He is also the man many believe was the true Pope elected at the 1958 conclave, 2 days before Angelo Roncalli.
Here is the Sistine Chapel, as set for the election of the 262nd Pontiff. Each of the 51 cardinals present occupies his throne during each...
This is 77-year-old Cardinal Angelo Roncalli, a man who had been dismissed from his teaching position at the Lateran Seminary in Rome for promoting the revolutionary theories of Rudolf Steiner. He was also known to socialize frequently with high-level Freemasons, communists, and modernists. A man who Pius XII at the behest of the FBI and the U.S. State Department, sent off to Venice as Archbishop in hopes to keep him out of trouble for the remainder of his life. Hardly a desirable profile for a papal candidate.
Actual round of balloting. The results are signaled by this stove to the watching world. Straw from old wine boxes is mixed with the unsuccessful ballots to send up black smoke. A successful ballot will be marked by white smoke. In the square outside,
what the narrator says here is not quite right. The ballots are always burned after every second balloting. When no one received enough ballots, wet straw is added to the ballots, which produces a thick, dark smoke. On the other hand, if a new pope is chosen, dry straw is added, which produces pure white smoke, easily distinguishable from the first type. It's a very simple procedure. Anyone can try it themselves in their backyard.
Right. Eager attention is concentrated on the thin chimney atop the Sistine Chapel to the right of St. Peter's Basilica. It is almost noon when the first puff or fumetta appears. It's white.
This is the first fumetta, which appeared shortly before noon on the first day of balloting, Sunday, October 26th. The second fumetta, which we will see shortly, appeared at 5:55 p.m. and lasted a full 5 minutes before turning dark. It is important to note that at the previous papal conclave, which elected Pius XII, the white smoke burned for only 2 minutes.
Excitement fills the square until the second, a black puff emerges moments later. Rebuffed enthusiasm makes the deadlock of the cardinals seem all the longer through the succeeding ballots.
This footage was taken by journalist Jacques Perrault and produced and broadcast by French Radio and Television Broadcasting. What you are seeing now is footage from the fateful Sunday evening in October 1958. Over 200,000 people are gathered in St. Peter's Square awaiting the new pope. Little do they know, as darkness falls on Rome, that an impostor is on hand waiting to claim the chair of Peter. This is the very clear emission of white smoke which lasted for 5 minutes. Naturally, the cardinals and the men at the stove can hear the chorus of 200,000 voices celebrating the news. If a pope has not been elected, then it would be time to throw some wet straw into the stove and change the signal. But the white smoke persists. The announcer on Vatican Radio, Padre Pellegrino, exclaims, "The smoke is white. There can be no doubt. A pope has been elected." Reports go out around the world that a new pope has been elected. Vatican officials scramble to their positions to greet the new pope. The crowd looks to the balcony, where the pope should appear within 20 minutes. But no pope appears. Later that evening, Vatican Radio announces that there had been a mistake and that no pope had been chosen. At the time of this event, it would have been inconceivable to most people that the election of a pope could be suppressed in such a way. But looking back over 50 years of destruction, many are arriving at this moment as the pivotal event in the decline of the church. The smoke signal was no mistake. Someone became pope that night. The subsequent question is, who was it? As mentioned before, Cardinal Siri was the man most people thought would succeed Pope Pius XII. We will now turn to two other sources who claim that Cardinal Siri became pope that evening. Our first source is FBI consultant Dr. Paul L. Williams. Williams quotes two State Department declassified files in his book, The Vatican Exposed. In 1958, when the cardinals were locked away in the Sistine Chapel to elect a new pope, mysterious events began to unfold. On the third ballot, Siri, according to FBI sources, obtained the necessary votes and was elected as Pope Gregory XVII. On the next page, Williams continues. On the fourth ballot, according to FBI sources, Siri again obtained the necessary votes and was elected Supreme Pontiff. But the French cardinals annulled the results, claiming that the election would cause widespread riots and the assassination of several prominent bishops behind the Iron Curtain. The next source is best-selling author, Jesuit, and former papal advisor, Father Malachi Martin.
Now, Malachi Martin confirms that actually Siri will be elected also for the next conclave, which means the conclave which elected another Freemason, because Roncalli was a Freemason. John the 23rd was a Freemason, and the follow-up was actually Papa Montini. And in my book here, volume 5 of my Confessions, I show the Vatican Masonic involvement. I show the photo of his lover, who he used to meet in secret in Switzerland, a very known Italian actor. And this document here, which I did at the House of Caldirola, was the dedication with the Masonic dedication to Caldirola made by the successor, Pope Paul VI, which was a Freemason. And you can actually see here in the dedication, he addresses him as a Mason.
That guy's really nice. He was like one of the few nice people in
Caldirola?
Yeah, he was so
Caldirola
nice.
was very nice, but he never wanted me to photograph this document. Only at the end, when he was about to die, he said, "Okay, Leo, go upstairs." And I went upstairs and I made this photo, which is included in volume 5 of my Confession. Instead, in volume 3 of my Confessions, I show the picture with the last seminaries of Cardinal Siri, and also the picture of the white smoke and all the other evidence of what went on behind the scenes with Cardinal Siri. And on top of that, in volume 6.66 of my Confession, which is another very important book, I show this pic. Now, this pic is, you can't see it so clearly maybe, but that is Cardinal Parolin, who is one of the papabili, with
Pier
Giorgio Bassi.
I can't see it. Is that him?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hate that guy.
Pier Giorgio Bassi from the Academy of the Illuminati. So
You can read about that in my book.
Well, you can read it also in your book, which is volume?
Volume 1, I wrote
Volume
that.
1 of
Confessions of Illuminati Princess.
but also in volume 6.66 and the connections with everything else. So as you see, Leo Zagami has always brought you the very inside information that nobody has.
No.
So this is not because I want to, be bombastic, but guys, we are about to blow up the Vatican, not with a bomb like in the movie Conclave. There is a couple of explosions in Rome, all this tension that grows, and then the Cardinal of Kabul defends from the traditionalists who wants to fight Islam, and more like let's bring all together, kumbaya in the Vatican. And that is what the movie Conclave is all about, because of course is a movie based on a plot devised by liberals. In fact, we have also Bellini, the actor who does Bellini, how is called? Tucci, what's his name? Is the guy who does this cookery show.
Oh yeah, he did a pasta. I knew that Tucci guy.
Conclave. Let me show something. Conclave, the movie, which is one of the main characters who, of course, everybody knows because he has done a lot of other movies. Stanley Tucci.
Yeah. I copied one of his recipes. It was good.
Yeah, he's good at cooking.
Yeah, it was a good recipe.
Anyway, in the movie Conclave, he's very much a liberal who wants to oppose the conservatives. Now, like we said, there is no opposition. This conclave should be quite fast and quite resolute, because
Maybe it'll be the fastest one ever, huh?
Bergoglio was very adamant of rigging the whole thing. But in any case, this cardinal would like to become pope, but then in the end, he doesn't have enough support because he says he's too openly liberal. Whatever. Another thing that I wanted to show you, though, is the cover of my book, which is coming out next week. This book, guys, is finally gonna hit the Vatican like a bomb, I said, because it's a book that concludes the whole Confession of an Illuminati series. It's the book that brings you right there to the top of the pyramid with the history, secret societies, and the politics of the Jesuit New World Order and the Luciferian court. Guys, this book is really a book you need to get when it comes out, and it's going to be a book that challenges the most powerful religious order in the world. It shows you how powerful they are, and Christ is now going to be reading the blurb that you can find on the back of the book to give you a general idea of what to expect. Guys, volume 12 is going to be my last book of the Confession series. Not my last book, thanks God, because I will continue, hopefully, for a long time doing books, but I really wanted to save the best for last, and now you will understand why.
In the last 40 years, there has been almost nothing written.
Yes, just
again.
A second. I want to, while you read, Christy, I want to people to focus on this incredible cover, which also sees this painting, which you can find at the Jesuit Mother Church. But let's focus on the blood, please.
In the last 40 years, there have been almost nothing written against the diabolical plots in almost 500-year history of the Jesuit-led New World Order in English. Have you ever wondered why? Most authors and researchers prefer to avoid this subject because they are often unprepared and afraid of repercussions from the powerful and unscrupulous Society of Jesus, described as the scientists of the church and God's soldiers, who in the meantime openly control the educational establishment and covertly push alternative theories, often blaming the Jews. For the first time, a world-renowned expert on the Vatican and former Grand Master of a paramasonic order will unveil the untold secrets of the company and their Jesuit generals, viewed by some elite Freemasons and Illuminati as the disembodied eye, which was substituted for the pyramid's missing capstone, the stone the builders rejected. In the final, unmissable installment of the popular Confessions of an Illuminati series, Leo Zagami reveals who is at the top of the pyramid that controls the world, revealing for the first time the untold secrets of the Jesuit Luciferian court, made up of secret societies, think tanks, politicians, businessmen, and religious leaders, whose final purpose is to promote global communism and the rise of Satanism and the Antichrist.
This book, guys, is probably my most challenging book, and it's also been one of the most difficult to put together. That's why I saved it for the last, no? Because you are challenging the guys who have in their hands the best universities on the planet. And you want to do it with facts. You want to do it with hard evidence. You don't want to do it by speculating. You want to do it by bringing the evidence.
There's no opinions.
There is no opinion. There is evidence on evidence on evidence from the best and most qualified academic sources, archives, and so on.
Undeniable evidence.
Undeniable evidence. So I'm challenging the Jesuits openly right from the beginning of the book. Nobody has done anything like it since Malachi Martin came out in the middle of the 80s with his Jesuits. Later on, we had Eric Phelps, my friend Phelps, back in the days, did Vatican Assassins, but that was in the year 2000. Like I said, there has not been many books at all on this subject for a long time, too long, because everybody's afraid to talk bad about the Jesuits. They have secret societies. They have established secret societies in the most prestigious universities. In this book, there is actually the real story behind Donald J. Trump and the Jesuits. And it's going to show you how Trump refused for 2 times their offers. So this book is unprecedented. I hope you understand that when it comes out, hopefully on the 1st of May, which I think is a very appropriate day for the last installment of my confessions.
And it's also our anniversary.
Yes, absolutely. I think that a lot of people, I mean, yes, absolutely. This is going to be a very special moment. There was also Alberto Rivera, but it's been how long since Alberto Rivera with Chick Tracts did anything? That was in the 80s too. We're talking about a whole new millennium in which there's no books on the Jesuits. Nobody writes them because nobody knows this subject.
Nobody like you.
Nobody knows it, and nobody can also deliver you secrets that very rarely are told, testimonies from the Jesuits themselves about their own secret doings. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Vatican reacts, because I didn't really know that this book will come out with a new pope, but I was thinking that Pope Francis was on his last legs. He was almost dying. And so I thought I need to bring this book out as soon as possible. And actually, I thought I bring this book out and he's going to die, because he's going to read this book and he's going to die. He's going to die. Unfortunately, he didn't.
Well, God's in charge of everything.
God is in charge of
including
everything.
him. And
but
when he dies,
you're going to discover secrets about the Jesuits and about what goes on in Rome and under Rome, and what happens inside the Vatican and around the Vatican. That are going to make you really shocked. So be ready for this great book release. And of course, guys, I wanted to close down this show in a special way. I have some exclusive images just from last night. I mean, people, of course, have been going in and out of the Vatican. There is a lot. Everybody's preparing. They were preparing, of course, for the funeral. You see all the cameras, the media, everything. There was a lot of people, of course, that were still visiting the Pope when he was still dead. Now he's been brought in another place. Why? Well, you can discover it by reading my book, The Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, Saint Mary Major. There is a whole story from that point onwards that unfolds in my book. And it's no Dan Brown fantasy book. It's a real book. Mm-hmm. It actually reveals certain things about the promotion of Dan Brown's Angel and Demons that are going to make you like, wow. Yeah. I didn't know the Jesuits were involved. So get ready. And I'm going to end up the show today in a different way. No, I'm going to end up the show with the same ending which usually I use for my Italian show. It's a rap. No?
Yeah, and it's a rap about you.
It's a rap about me in Italian. It was done back in the days when I was actually challenging the Jesuits, also politically in Italy. It didn't work out well, guys. You know what happened? In the end, I had to flee Italy in 2019. Mm-hmm. But this rap, along with the rap, you will see the images. And
I think it's very enjoyable. So.
I think absolutely.
And thank you to our sponsors.
Who are the sponsors today, Christy?
Daniel Estes, Mel Rizzotta Minta, and Aiden Carter, and every great person that bought the book, and all the people here that are supporting this show.
Thank you so much. If you want to, of course, find the Cash App handle, you can go on leozagami.com. I'm going to put it for you on the screen, my GoFundMe, in case you want to support us.
We have a new month coming in May. You know, it's May now.
Yes.
So we need sponsors.
We need sponsors. Otherwise,
there is no otherwise.
There is no otherwise.
There is no otherwise.
Guys, you need to sponsor this broadcast so we can bring you even more than one broadcast a week. But we need, of course, for that, your support. People tell me, but you do a lot of shows in Italian. Yes, I have sponsors.
They pay.
Guys, I have sponsors in Italian. I don't have sponsors in the English language.
They pay a lot in Italian.
So I mean, please keep that in mind when you ask me to do shows in English. I don't have. I'm going to change. I forgot I had Lesule banner. Now I have the Zagami show. But that's how it is. That's why I do shows in Italian, because I have sponsors. And
He does 4 shows a week.
Yeah,
in Italian,
because I have sponsors.
And he always, he goes on and on with it. It's been how many years now? 5
years.
5 years that he's been doing 4 shows a week for the Italians, and they never stop these shows because they always
support.
They need him, and so they give.
Absolutely, but
and it's not, it's just enough to keep us going, and that's all that matters.
So if you want to support our show, GoFundMe or Cash App, or the purchase of my books. And of course, I see you next week on Saturday. May is going to be an incredible month. I already have received offers from all sorts of big shows on the internet, shows with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, millions of views. They all want me because, of course, they know that Leo Zagami predicted the last Pope, Pope Francis, and now is predicting the new Pope. And once that Pope materializes in front of your eyes, you're going to see also, wow. But also, you want to know what is behind this new liberal Pope, regardless of the fact he's black or Chinese or whatever he is. He's going to be another liberal anti-Trumpian. Remember that. Keep that in mind.
Leo Zagami, la politica cambia musica.
Oh yes!
Leo Zagami, almeno fatelo dire da un ex illuminato.
See you next week!
Chiesa, servizi segreti, NATO, gesuiti, illuminati, spionaggio, massoni, scandali infiltrati, MK Ultra, criminali organizzati.
The opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Un nuovo ordine mondiale.
La banda di ricatti, di fatti e misfatti parla di illuminati, infatti fa luce sui fatti. E tra tanti mischiati a sta mischia da matti, cantanti, drogati e politici rispettati. E tu non ci credi e fai lo scettico, ma all'ordine massonico e all'ordine del giorno spegni quel cazzo di monitor, che è da lì che ti controllano, tra mode che nascono e muoiono, giochi come vogliono, tutti zitti che l'occhio ci scruta, e la cura alla gente più astuta sta in fiale di cicuta. Non ne sai o non vuoi, perché le conseguenze poi rischiano d'essere più grandi di noi. Ma Leo Zagami li ha già visti sti scenari, 3 pilastri, 2 colonne e pentagrammi vari, spionaggio, satanismo, Vaticano e templari. Ma Leo c'è per non restare ignari. Dammi una mano un po' a svegliare sta nazione che non crede nell'ovvio, però si fa una religione. Servi della chiesa in nome di un solo signore, che presto piegherà il pianeta in una situazione di disordine sociale. Messaggio subliminale, controllo mentale, nuovo ordine mondiale.
A new world order.
Un nuovo ordine mondiale.
Chiesa, servizi segreti, NATO, gesuiti, illuminati, spionaggio, massoni, scandali infiltrati, MK Ultra, criminali organizzati.
E quindi la scelta delle 2 pillole, quella blu e quella rossa. Io ho scelto quella rossa.